So did you see this nomination for a second term coming?
Well, I think I would largely describe that nomination as a move that was widely unexpected. As a matter of fact, there had been speculations around some other names that, people thought had been put forward. So as far as a lot of analysts were concerned, Mr. MPR was going to proceed on a terminal leave, and his term was not going to be renewed. So when the news hit the wires yesterday, I think there was a lot of surprise at that. And yes, it was a move that was, largely unexpected. Yes.
So since 1999 now, tradition has been, like you said, terminal leave once you see that the tenure is about to lapse. So
yes.
What is significant about this nomination that we are seeing?
I think, what is significant about it in terms of, the import for markets generally is the fact that we're going to see a lot of continuity. If you look back on the first term of his tenure, he's had to fight a lot of fires, really. He came in at a time where, crude prices were essentially collapsing, which led to a currency crisis that ensued, and we also had a recession as well. A lot of the policy initiatives that, he's championed and taken have also pretty much steered, the country away from the sort of crisis that he inherited. The introduction of the investors and exporters window of the foreign exchange markets did quite a lot to assuage nerves as regards foreign exchange. So also quite a lot has been done in the area of agriculture. So you see the policy diverting or dabbling into the fiscal area of things just to stimulate the economy. So I think that the first tenure has been a decent performance. A lot of fires have been they've had to fight a lot of fires. So I think what we're probably going to see is a lot of continuity going into the second term.
Any significant changes that you anticipate will happen? He's got 5 more years now.
Yes. Well, I don't see any change, really. I think the path is clear and sort of set in terms of, monetary policy, in terms of inflation, exchange rates. I think the path is set, and I think that the governor would essentially continue on the path that we've seen him being on the last couple of years. So that path is set, and it would continue. I think that also bodes well for financial markets, because markets really don't like uncertainty. So this basically just tells us, gives us a very clear indication as to what the governor is likely to do. And we think that he's going to continue essentially on the path that he's been consolidating on a lot of the gains that have been made, particularly on the FX and inflation front. So I think that's what we're going to see going forward.
With regards to multiple exchange rate windows that have been in conversation for a while now, what policies do you anticipate this renewal of a tenure might mean for that, given that it's been looked forward to very much?
Yes. So with regards to the multiple exchange rate windows that we've seen so far, I think if you look at what has happened over the last 2 years thereabout, we've seen a semblance of a convergence within that market. So I think that it will we will need to see some bold initiatives with respect to sort of harmonizing those rates to ensure that the market is consolidated in a way that these windows are sort of reduced and done away with. But again, it remains to be seen how the new tenure will bode in terms of that area and in terms of what the governor is likely to do. But I mean, consensus and the jury is out there that these windows should be done away with, and convergence is happening, so it gives us impetus for those windows to be done away with.
Talking about waiting to see what the new tenure brings, let's take a step back to look at the process of selection and ratification of a central bank governor in Nigeria.
Well, I mean, typically serves at the pleasure of the president. President nominates and then has to be confirmed by the Senate. We don't expect any ruckus at the Senate at this time. Would expect that his confirmation would sail through pretty smoothly. So after that is done, then he carries on with his tenure extension, really. So that's what we're going to see.
So if his tenure is approved by the Senate now, he's got 5 years up until 2024, after which we will see a new president. Let me know what one key policy would you anticipate that the CBN governor, if appointed eventually, will bring to the fore? Well,
I think that quite a lot has been done in the area of, the central bank supporting agriculture, supporting the creative industry. I think that he's going to consolidate on those, probably also look at certain other areas of the fiscal dimension that they can actually support even more to spur growth in the economy. price stability is a mandate, is going to continue to be a very strong focus. With regards to the FX market, I really don't see any drastic policy changes in that area. I think he's essentially going to consolidate and continue on the path that, you know, he's been on over the last couple of years. So with respect to monetary policy, particularly with the exchange rate, I think he's going to continue on that path. If you look at interest rates, I think the CBN has been on a path of pretty much sort of slowly reducing, you know, government's, you know, the rate at which government borrows, and I think it's going to probably continue on that path as long as those rates stay, you know, attractive, you know, to keep our FX market, you know, alive and keep the exchange rate at sustainable levels. So I think they're going to continue on this path. I don't see any significant divergence or difference from, you know, the policy path that we've been on for the last couple of years.
Interventions with regards to loans to the private sector have also been on the front burner in line with conversations. I know that for the first time in, I think, about 4 years or 2 years, we had the MPC actually did make some step, dropping 50 basis points.
Yeah.
To what extent do you think that we might see a flow or a reflection in the private sector?
Well, in terms of, you know, opening up and extending more credit to the private sector, I think that what the CBN probably has to do is, you know, making the, if you will, ammunition with which banks are able to lend, you know, making it more available to banks. So probably tinkering with some other policy tools, maybe the CRR, for instance, to ensure that, you know, banks are able to lend. But beyond that, really, we need to look at the state where the economy is pretty much, and the economy is on the mend in terms of, you know, recovering from a recession. The recovery has not been very strong. I think policy will be directed to areas that would ensure that the recovery is consolidated and even gets stronger. I think it's on the back of that that the banks can actually begin to grow their loan book. If we don't see any significant growth, regardless of whatever policy tool that the Apex Bank tinkers with, it will really be difficult for that to translate into you know, a growth in the extension of credit to the private sector.
Thank you very much for your time and thoughts on the show this morning, Victor.